have photoreceptors on them, the red blood cells, and the ultraviolet light activates them somehow, that they start doing their own radiation. And it's radiating at a higher frequency. And they actually think that's how cells communicate, is kind of we are light beings, I mean literally and figuratively. And just like you behave differently when you're feeling sad and your energy is really low than when you're feeling good and your energy is really high, so do cells, which is probably why it's looking like it's fairly good for cancer. But it engenders the other cells to do their own radiation, and they found that that's what causes most of the killing. Now the good thing about that is Lyme hides everywhere, so do parasites, so do all of these organisms, inside red blood cells, inside tendons, inside skin cells, heart cells, just about everywhere. Guess where the blood goes? Everywhere. And I still find it hard to believe, but they tell me that there's 90,000 miles of blood vessels in every chair that's occupied in this room. That's a lot. And they supply, there's 11 trillion cells in all of these chairs out here too, in each individual chair, but they all need their own blood supply. So that blood goes everywhere. So there's really nowhere for these bugs to hide anymore.
No risks in the treatment?
I'm getting there.
Okay? I'm jumping ahead.
Give me a chance here. There's been, with this device that I'm using, and it's still in study mode. It has not been FDA approved. It's been approved in Europe. I think it now has been approved in Canada. Their initial approval in this country, they tried, well, this device is very much like this device, which is approved, and they didn't, that was an attempt, but they said, no, it's different, you've got to go through the whole approval process. So it's still under a study, so patients that get this treatment are under what we call an IRB. But they've done over 100,000 treatments, well over 100,000 treatments now with this system. 0 adverse events, okay? I mean, I have been in medicine a long time. I can't give 500 people any drug and not have 15, 20, 30, 40 adverse events, okay? I haven't ever seen anything that is so safe. And you can have a bruise. I mean, it's not getting your blood drawn. I mean, you can have a bruise. You can have a hematoma, a little bruise under the skin. It's not a really big deal, you know. But other than the risk of actually inserting the IV, they've had 0 adverse events, which is very phenomenal. And interestingly, in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, guess how many adverse events they had? 0. And, you know, does this thing cause cancer 20 years down the road? Well, it didn't from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, or 20s. And so, I mean, we have almost 100 years, well, we do have 100 years experience with this kind of technology, and there's been no untoward effects. And try that with some of these, you know, ads you see on TV. Well, come on in and you can go to the swimming pool because we'll treat your psoriasis, and you know, by the way, it might kill you, it might destroy your organs, it might kill your kidneys, it might, you know, destroy your ability to have kids. I mean, you know, I'm like, but you can go to the swimming pool, you know, and who knows what these diseases are going to do. And I used to joke with my patients, I said, we're going to see a tree fungus that we walk by every day, killing people because we're destroying their immune systems, totally, so they can go to the swimming pool. Well, guess what happened 2 years ago? Some guy down south died of a tree fungus that we're probably exposed to on a regular basis. I mean, we're in Fungus City here. We live in agriculture and we live in moisture. You know, they're everywhere. So I'm not in favor of destroying the immune system. The treatments, initially we thought that we were told that about 10 treatments would be about it. We found that about 45 to 50% of people need more than 10 treatments. The optimal spacing of those is once a week, although that varies a lot. I have patients from actually 16 different states that come in, well, it's more than that, but probably active patients right now from about 12 different states that come to see me. So some of them come in, they stay in town, we'll do 1 a day. 4 a week is the maximum we will do though. We've done 2 in a day, but I don't really like to do that. You can herx pretty significantly from these. And when I say herx, do you know what I'm talking about? Okay, I didn't lose anybody? All right. And so the effects are cumulative, but it's amazing how fast people feel better with this. It's very good with neurological, Lyme. I think that it is also very good for viruses. What our experience has been amazing with viruses. Last year we had the I call it the shaky virus, and I know it hit Madison, it hit Appleton really hard, it hit Oshkosh a little bit, but my wife, who happens to be sitting in the back of the room, Tuesday night she was in March, and she was just shaking so hard I could hear her teeth chatter, and I'm like, oh boy. So Wednesday we did a treatment. She felt pretty bad, and then by the way, the shaky virus, one school, it took 15% of the kids out in Appleton, and kids and teachers, and they were out for 10 to 12 days with this, and then not feeling that well, but well enough to come back. So she felt pretty bad on Wednesday, we did a treatment. On Thursday, she felt even worse, we did a treatment. On Thursday night, she was probably as ill as I have ever seen her, and I actually didn't sleep well that night. On Friday morning, she woke up and she was fine. It was just like a switch went off, and I was like, holy crap. And it's not supposed to happen. It's excellent for influenza. 1 or 2 treatments, depending on the year, and your influenza's just gone, which beats the heck out of 14 days of feeling like you wish you would die. So I know it's good for those viruses. I'm assuming it's good for some of the other viruses that I'll talk about here in a little bit, which is really good news because there is no treatment. If you look up Powassan virus, if you look up Heartland virus, they will say there's no treatment. I probably have 4 things in my office that I can treat them with. So I disagree that there's no treatment, but I think this IV is by far the best. So far we've had amazing results. It hasn't done it, it's not 100%. It's probably 95%. I've had some people that needed to go back on antibiotics after they did 12 or 15 treatments. There's a number of things that can influence treatments in general for Lyme, and toxins are a big one. I mean, heavy metals, pesticides, mold, toxicity, and I see a lot of patients that come from other practitioners, and they've been treated sometimes for 6 years. I say, are you any better? Well, not really. I'm like, wow, you're a patient person. And you know, we look at them and they're toxic. They're extremely toxic. And I can treat you for 6 years. We're not going to get anywhere until we get rid of the toxins. There's your immune status, and you know, when someone comes in, I look at your immune status. There's about 8 different things I do to ensure that I'm on the right track that you have Lyme, because no single test, I don't care if you walk up to me with a positive IGeneX, it doesn't guarantee you have Lyme. But more importantly, it doesn't guarantee that you don't have Lyme. So I'm checking a CD57, I'm checking a C4A, I'm checking a number of other inflammatory markers. I'm looking at your symptoms. I use electrodermal skin testing in my office. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but a lot of docs would go, well, you can't. That's just absolute quackery. It's pretty darn good quackery. I find it's very helpful. It's not diagnostic, but it's another piece to the puzzle, and it's another bit of information. And it's some of the only ways that I can maybe look for some of these things. And the nice thing is I can use it to follow treatment as we go. Some of the other reasons, everybody with Lyme has a slow metabolism, as a lot of you in the room could probably attest to. Hey, you want to go play racquetball? No, thanks. Not today. I just got up and I feel like I need to go back to bed. You know, there's hormone changes that take with it. Just having the massive amount of inflammation just rips up everything in your body. This affects everything in your life. Lyme can manipulate just about every immune system that we have or defense system that we have. It can change and shift its antigenic coat. In other words, you know, if I rob the bank and I run out in this coat, I get out to my car, I put on a red coat, okay? everybody's looking for somebody with a black coat. Now I'm wearing a red coat. So they're not looking for me, and that's what Lyme does. It can hide, it can go all in different forms. If you had Lyme more than 2 months, it has affected your immune system. So it's already starting to take that down. And what do we use mostly to test for Lyme is the immune system in most of the tests. So I keep reading these papers and it says, well, you know, IgM is only, if you've had it more than 30 days, don't even bother testing IgM because that will be gone, okay? And IgG, these are antibodies, different classes of antibodies, comes up within 2 weeks and will be there forever. Well, in IGeneX, 80% of people that are positive with Lyme, almost all chronic, are IgM. And only 20% are IgG. In my experience, if you're IgG positive, that means you've had it a long time. Probably 8, 9, 10 years, and there is some overlap where they're both positive, but not a lot. And IgM is supposed to be there quickly, but then go away very rapidly. It doesn't with Lyme, because Lyme disrupts the communication in the immune system. So it hangs around for many years. And then the longer if you continue to have Lyme, and you've had it 20 years, nothing may be positive. And I call those corrosion infections. You're functional, you don't feel good, you're getting along, maybe you have that hip replaced at 62, but, well, you're 62, it just wore out, you know, or that's what they're gonna tell you. I'm an anti-aging doctor, and I go, no, not really. I don't think so. I think there's probably another reason. And many, many, many years ago, when I was a grad student at the University of Minnesota, the leading orthopedic doctor there, every total hip that he did, that he replaced, before he pulled that hip joint out, he would check it for Lyme disease. He was maintaining that 80% of the total hips that he was replacing at the University of Minnesota many years ago, before Lyme even got popular, was due to an occult, undiagnosed, untreated Lyme infection. And they laughed at him.
What was that doctor's name?
Oh, geez, I don't remember. That was in the 80s.
Okay.
But it stuck with me. I'm not laughing. I think I wasn't laughing then. I'm not laughing now. I think the guy was spot on. That, you know, that did that. I'm jumping around here a little bit, but this just occurred to me. And I did the math on this last night. Actually, at Lyme Disease Association, there was a doctor from Mayo who presented on the most recent new species of Lyme. And by the way, there's over 1,000 species in the world. There's over 300 in this country, probably at least 30 or so that are major problems. And most Lyme tests out there only use one species to test. IGeneX uses up to 3, which is one of the reasons. But in the last, I think since 2009, there have been at least 15 new species of Lyme discovered in this country. And it just keeps going. But the most recent one was Mayoni, Borrelia mayoni, discovered at Mayo Clinic, from a Wisconsin patient, actually, from western Wisconsin, which has always been the worst part of Wisconsin to live in, historically, for Lyme. And they had to admit that, well, instead of what the state says, and that 70% of people have the erythema migrans or bullseye rash, that this doesn't seem to cause that very often. And so now we can have Lyme without having the bullseye rash. Well, truth be known that in the Lyme Disease Association study of 6,100 Lyme patients, 17% had the bullseye rash. That's not very many. And 30% even knew they had a tick bite. So 70% didn't even know they had a tick bite. And I have in my office my little tick collection, and when I show people the size of these deer ticks, most of them are just flat out amazed, even though they know quite a bit about Lyme usually by the time they get to me. And it really, the little one is about the size of a period on this piece of paper. And I'm like, okay, go find that. And if it gets in a hairy part of your body, I see some mains out there where you can hide 100,000 of these guys, you know, no problem. So, But in her talk, she showed that a spirochete in the blood, and on probably just about everybody in this room, if we looked at your blood under the right kind of microscope, we would see spirochetes. Now, when I was a microbiologist, I could diagnose syphilis, proof positive that way, okay, which is a brother to Lyme, same type of bacteria. But I can see a spirochete in your blood, and all I can say is there's a bacteria in your blood. That's kind of a double standard. But I figured out, based on the calculations of how many spirochetes they were seeing, that in that patient, according to their statistics, there were 510 million organisms. Okay? That's a bunch of Lyme, okay? So, when I tell people about herxine, I say, let's say we start off with 10 million organisms. Well, I guess my estimates, and I said that's probably low, I guess I was a little low. So, that's kind of what we're dealing with. So what's new? That's some of the old stuff. Well, they're really working a lot with persisters right now, and the concept of persisters. And the infectious disease types of the world, who say that 2 weeks of doxy and you're fine, they've been hard pressed to describe why so many patients come back and say, my symptoms are back. So they have come up with post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome, okay? Which they attribute to, it's the host response to antigens left over, i.e. dead bacteria left over in your body. Well, every other dead bacteria that we get in our body is cleared out within 48 hours, okay? So I'm not sure how they think these things hang around for 6 months or longer, okay? They say, well, it's an autoimmune reaction that's been triggered, which there probably is some truth to that. We know Lyme can trigger rheumatoid arthritis. It can trigger psoriatic arthritis. As a matter of fact, I saw a patient last week that I've been working on since 2012, and I think now he's developing psoriatic arthritis. I'm like, geez, poor guy. I'm pretty sure we've got his Lyme treated, but now we've got this to deal with. The co-infections are probably a big part of the, and some people say, well, there's residual damage in your red blood cells or your blood cells from the Lyme that is causing these vasculitises and different kinds of inflammatory reactions. And you can't really treat post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome because the organisms are dead. So you can't culture them, so they're not there, so don't give antibiotics. Well, you know what? People respond to antibiotics. And after you've been treated for a while, a lot of the organisms won't grow, even though I can draw your blood and see them, they won't grow. They're non-viable, but they're still capable of producing the disease. Probably the real reason for post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome is we haven't treated it completely yet, okay? And there's persisters. And they're really studying the concept of persisters a lot, which are nasties. They take people that are done with treatment, and they have them come back every 3 months, and they do this complete battery of tests on them. And they're negative, 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 negative. They get out 1 year to 2 years and positive. Everything goes positive again. And persisters are very resistant forms of bacteria, probably mostly in biofilms. And biofilms you've all had experience with here. When you go to the dentist, what does he do or she do? They get out their little scrapers and they go scrapey, scrapey on your teeth. Well, they're scraping off a biofilm. And then there's bacteria underneath there that are working on your enamel with their little picks and hammers, and that's why the dentist wants to get them out of there. But they've secreted this glycoprotein matrix over them. It's like a little igloo. And they can do their thing underneath. They can have fun, they can party, they can reproduce, and work on your enamel, but the body's defenses can't get in there. And then they kick the young ones out, and just so, it keeps seeding the system with fresh bacteria. And that's what Lyme does, that's what Bartonella does, that's what a number of these do. They have their biofilms, which they're protected in this dense mat, if you will, and they just keep kicking the young ones out. So we've got to get rid of those biofilms before we can get these. The scary thing is to treat these persisters, they're taking up to 4 drugs at one time, either antibiotics or chemotherapeutic agents, different kinds of medicines, some of which I'm afraid to use, actually. So it's very hard, and they haven't really found great ways to treat these yet. It's like, great, you know, it's very hard to treat. What about Lyme and Alzheimer's? All right, well, it turns out that the most recent research, Alzheimer's is caused by amyloid plaques, which are kind of one of the things that causes it. They're abnormal plaques that form in your brain. There's a lot of people feeling right now, and research is indicating that these plaques are not our enemy. They are probably our friend, but they are the brain's response to an infection. So Alzheimer's might have an infectious cause, and these plaques are designed to trap the bacteria. Unfortunately, they're not very good at holding the bacteria. And if it's something like Lyme, it can trap it for a while, but the immune system is compromised, which really kills things. And they can escape out of these plaques and go on to cause more problems, but the plaques remain. And you get enough of these plaques, presumably from enough infection, and you now have dementia. So it's a whole different way of looking at it. I mean, there's always been the thought of, well, these are an abnormal process that takes place in the brain, and we've got to figure out what causes these, and well, maybe it's a normal process, maybe it's a good process, it just gets carried away in the brain, and maybe the way to treat dementia is with antibiotics. Viruses. Talked about them already. In 2009, they discovered Heartland virus, okay, after it killed a bunch of people. Still, as far as I'm aware, not many good tests for it. There's no treatment. If you talk to CDC, they say there is no treatment for it. In 2014, a healthy, about 50-ish-year-old farmer in Kansas got a tick bite. Within 2 days, he's almost in a coma, goes into the hospital. 10 days later, he's dead, despite everything that they tried. On autopsy, they discovered a new virus called the bourbon virus, okay, which is tick-borne. No treatment. 10% fatal, okay? How does that make you feel? Yeah. Powassan virus, otherwise known as deer tick virus. Again, they're calling these new viruses, and when they say new, it's not that these viruses popped up in 2009 or 2014. It's just that's when we put a name on them, okay? And there's a whole bunch out there that are number 678-924 that nobody's really been able to characterize yet. But if in the last, 2009 to now, in less than 10 years, if we've discovered 3 viruses that are tick-borne, you think there might be some more out there that we don't even know about. And they're saying they've got no treatment. I'm saying I think I can treat them in my office. I think the ultraviolet treatment treats them. I have some herbal treatments and some other treatments that are actually fairly good for viruses. But conventional medicine really doesn't have anything for these. So that's kind of that's one of the scarier aspects of this, and I think that's one of the reasons why I was taught, and every Lyme letter doctor is going to say, we can't cure you, okay? We don't know if we can cure you. If you've got this particular mix and you've got some of these viruses, I'm not sure we can get rid of those. We're not sure we can get rid of Lyme. Like herpes, once herpes is in the body, it's classic knowledge that it's there forever. Shingles is the virus that caused chickenpox coming out of a later time. Probably somebody in this room has had experience with that. There's Epstein-Barr virus. There's human herpes virus 6, human herpes virus 8. There's cytomegalovirus. Powassan is also known as the deer tick virus. And until recently, there really weren't any tests for it. There is one now, although I suspect there might be a few more, but the main one is right down here in a lab in Wauwatosa, but it's $600. I haven't tested anybody for it yet. So, some of this is really nice to know. I'd love to. The intellectual part of me really wants to know if you got this, but on the other hand, it's $600. And Lyme treatment is expensive, and it takes a while, and it's draining on families, and you know, a lot of these patients aren't working because they had to quit work. So I don't do that. I haven't done that test. I have some other ways I think that I can maybe get that information. So I've kind of really bounced around that nanotechnology. One of the other new things that's really exciting, that nanotechnology, and these are particles that are about 1/50th the size of a human hair, okay? So we're talking pretty darn small. That whole, all of science is just kind of exploding. I was watching, I think, Crazy Acts of Science on TV this week, and they're making these coatings you can put on a wall and nothing sticks, okay? Those little it's full of nanoparticles, and it keeps it clean. You can throw dye on it, paint on it, nothing, everything just falls off of it, and it's because of the properties. But besides testing, they're also starting to develop some of these that are like smart bombs that will carry antibiotics to the organism, or carry antivirals to the organism, and not bothering with anything else. So some of that technology is really very exciting that's coming up. Well, I've been rambling on and on and on. I'll bet there's some questions out there. So fire away. In the back.
What's your opinion about LDI treatments?
LDI?
Yeah, low dose immunotherapy.
Oh,
You know, it's basically treating it like trying to get it to respond to, not, have your body not respond to the antigen or the Lyme.
it's almost homeopathic. I mean, it's almost the same.
What's the going theory at ILADS, like the talk? What do they think about this stuff?
To tell you the truth, I haven't heard ILADS talk about that,
Really?
okay,
Okay.
at all. I have some problem with it because of all of the things that Lyme does to the immune system. But on the other hand, I use homeopathy, all right? And intellectually, it doesn't make any sense to me, okay? And does everybody understand homeopathy? You know what I'm talking about?
Go ahead and give us a little.
Okay. And that's where we all came from. All allopathic doctors came from homeopathic doctors, okay? But most allopathic doctors forget that, okay? And this has been around a lot longer than us smart MDs are, okay? Because we're pretty smart. You know, we're the best at everything in this country. And that's why we're 50th in life expectancy in this country. Yeah. But homeopathy is taking something like influenza, okay? Well, you take influenza and actually infect a duck with it, okay? And then the duck makes a response to that, and you can actually take part of that duck lung then that's been infected with influenza, and you dilute it, and dilute it, and dilute it, and dilute it, and dilute it. And you might have a dilution if you pick up something with, that's a, one of these medications, it'll say 10x, which is pretty weak, actually. If it says 100x, you probably only can get that through a physician. That's considered very strong. But you dilute it beyond Avogadro's number. And Avogadro's number, for the non-chemist in here, is if I have a certain quantity of gold or silver or anything, there's so many molecules of that in there, okay? And we know what that is. And you dilute it beyond the chance of any of those original molecules being in that solution. But what you are supposedly taking is that energy along with it. And the more you dilute it and treat it in a certain way, the stronger it gets. So to treat arsenic poisoning, we would give you arsenic essentially, but a dilution that really doesn't contain arsenic. It supposedly just contains the essence of the arsenic. To treat influenza, oxylococcinum is what they use, and you can buy that in a lot of drugstores around here, especially in this town. Darn stuff works. And intellectually, there's not supposed to be anything there of what you're using it to treat, except maybe the energy. But it works. So if that works, it stands to reason in my mind that that LDI might work, okay? But I have not seen any talks on that, or any lectures on that, or any information floating around on that.
How much do you charge per treatment for your light treatment?
The light treatments are either $220 or $210 per treatment,
And that's
depending
for
if you
an
buy
hour.
a package.
And that's for like an hour.
Yeah, that's an hour. Every treatment is exactly an hour. We plug you in, the machine times it out, and the national average right now is $240. There's people charging up to $800 a treatment for these. Of course, that's in Hollywood.
Or what does it cost to become a patient? You have to be a patient dealing with.
That, well, it depends. There's several ways to do it. I have a number of patients from, a number of Lyme patients that are seeing their doctors on the East Coast that are coming to my shop for the light treatments, okay? So then I just need to get them in, and, I have to establish a doctor-patient relationship, okay? So I have to get their history, and that's, I don't know, that might be $100, $150, I'm not even sure.
It's a little more than that, it's a 45-minute treatment or visit.
Okay, is that what it is currently? So, that's just, they're just coming there for the light treatment, okay? But I'm assuming the liability if anything happens. Standard patients, to become a patient, and we've got about a 3.5 or 4 month wait list right now, unfortunately. But my standard is I spend 2 hours, at least 2 hours with the patient, usually it's more than that. And then they usually spend another hour to an hour and a half with my nurses and my staff with education, and this is how to do this, and here's everything in writing, and, because most Lyme patients aren't firing on all cylinders up here initially, so they don't remember things very well.
So if you're currently treating with a
So-
Lyme doctor, you would be willing to accept the records and then for the light treatments.
Right, and my initial consults are $500, but by the time you get IGeneX testing done, by the time, usually a new patient, that first visit in our office is somewhere around $1,100 or so. With labs, it depends on a lot, how much testing. IGeneX is $200, and that goes straight to IGeneX. So a lot of that's labs.
But if you had that already established with another doctor, the records could be, whatever, sent
Right,
to you.
right. Yep, if you come in with the records, and then it's just a 45-minute appointment just to get you in the system, and,
Do the light treatment.
Now, the light treatments, in case any of you want to sign up for them tomorrow, we're about 3 months out on a waiting list for light treatments right now.
Now, the light treatments you did, you said you use red and green light, so it's not just UV, it's actually light in the visible spectrum that you use too?
Are we, if we're treating all along with herbs and rife and the ultraviolet light and things from other people, and we get to you, are we skewing are you gonna be able to find what's wrong with this because we've been screwing around with it for so long? Are things gonna be harder to find on us than somebody that just came in and didn't have any treatment?
No,
No?
I'd say probably a third of my patients have been to other doctors, so.
And that's very common.
Like 7 to 8 doctors.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean Lyme doctors.
Oh,
I'm not talking, the average patient that gets to any Lyme literate doctor has taken at least 22 months. They've seen an average of 7 specialists, okay? Rheumatology, psychiatry, you name it, neurology, well, gee, nothing's really, you can't really find anything. But I have a lot of patients that have seen one or more Lyme literate doctors. And like I said, for whatever reason has gotten disenchanted or just want a different opinion or whatever.
We all have our Prozac.
Yeah, that's right.
So Dr. Green, do you kind of do the antibiotics with many of your patients, like the antibiotics and the light treatment kind of in tandem, or what's kind of your usual
Okay.
approach?
Thank you, that's a good question, I didn't cover that. I start almost everybody on antibiotics. But instead of going 18 months or 24 months on antibiotics, it's antibiotics until we can get to the light treatment. I like at least 1 to 2 months of antibiotics, and then once we're on the light treatment, we stay on herbs and some of the others, but we stop the antibiotics. Which I don't like using antibiotics. I'm a microbiologist. It goes against my grain. I've really, my whole career, fought against using antibiotics, and there's tons of antibiotics still being used inappropriately for colds and viruses, and trust me, it takes a lot longer to explain to a patient why you're not giving them an antibiotic for their cold than it is just to give them, and most docs just give it. It's not gonna do any good, and it's actually harmful.